My name is Wesley, I'm 37 years old, and I thought I had a happy marriage until my appendix almost killed me. When excruciating pain left me unable to move, my wife Natasha showed her true colors. Instead of helping me to the hospital, she abandoned me to go on a romantic getaway with her lover. In my darkest moment, I called my estranged brother Stephen, who literally saved my life while she was busy betraying me. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted completely, you understand how I felt. Before I get into this unbelievable story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you've ever had someone show their true colors when you needed them most. Trust me, what happened next will shock you as much as it shocked me. Natasha and I met 8 years ago at a tech conference in San Francisco. I was presenting a new software development framework, and she was working the marketing booth for her company. She caught my eye immediately with her confident smile and the intelligent questions she asked during my presentation. After the conference ended for the day, we ran into each other at the hotel bar, and what started as casual shop talk turned into a 5-hour conversation. Our romance progressed quickly. Within 3 months, we were exclusive. By 6 months, we had moved in together, and at 8 months, I proposed on a weekend trip to Napa Valley. Looking back, the speed should have been my first red flag, but I was captivated by her energy, ambition, and the way she seemed to make everything in my life more exciting. We had an extravagant wedding that put us nearly $30,000 in debt, but Natasha insisted it was worth it to have the perfect day. The early years of our marriage were filled with international travel, career advancement, and what I thought was mutual support and affection. We posted perfect photos on social media, received compliments on being the ideal couple, and I genuinely believed we had something special. The warning signs were there from the beginning, but I rationalized them away. Natasha's spending habits were concerning, especially considering our wedding debt. She would shop compulsively, bringing home designer clothes and expensive home decor while I worried about our financial future. When I tried to discuss budgeting, she would become defensive, accusing me of trying to control her or not believing in her worth. More troubling was her attitude toward my family, especially my younger brother Stephen. From the moment they met at our engagement dinner, there was tension. Stephen runs a successful small construction business, but Natasha considered his profession beneath her. She would make subtle digs about his clothes, his pickup truck, or his simple lifestyle. When I defended him, she would accuse me of not standing by her. Gradually, I started declining family gatherings to avoid the tension, creating distance between me and the people who had always supported me. As our 5th anniversary approached, significant changes occurred in our marriage. I received a promotion to senior developer at my company, which came with a substantial raise but also longer hours and more responsibility. Around the same time, Natasha landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm, putting her in contact with high-profile clients and a new social circle she eagerly embraced. We had originally planned to start trying for children after 5 years of marriage, but Natasha continually found reasons to delay. First, it was her new job demanding all her energy. Then it was wanting to reach specific financial goals. Later, it became a desire to travel more before being tied down. I wanted children, but I respected her reservations and agreed to wait, hoping she would eventually feel ready. As we approached our 8th year together, we had essentially developed separate lives. My work consumed most of my weekdays, while Natasha built a vibrant social life with her colleagues. We took separate vacations. I preferred quiet retreats in nature, while she opted for trendy urban destinations with her work friends. We still shared a home and occasionally enjoyed date nights, but the deep connection I thought we had was fraying at the edges. Around this time, a name started appearing frequently in Natasha's stories: Vincent. He was a new creative director at her firm, apparently brilliant and charismatic. Initially, I thought nothing of it, as Natasha had always been social and enthusiastic about her colleagues. But something about the way her eyes lit up when she mentioned him made me uneasy. Meanwhile, my relationship with my brother Stephen had become strained by years of missed family events and unresolved tension. Stephen had married his college sweetheart Heather, and they had 2 children I barely knew. He had reached out several times to reconnect, but between my work schedule and Natasha's discouragement, our communication had dwindled to holiday texts and occasional social media interactions. My health had also begun to suffer. The stress of maintaining our lifestyle and meeting expectations at work led to poor sleep, irregular meals, and virtually no exercise. I ignored occasional stomach pains, attributing them to stress or poor diet, and pushed through fatigue with increasing amounts of coffee. In the weeks before the incident, those stomach pains became more frequent, particularly on my lower right side. I mentioned it to Natasha once, but she suggested it was probably from sitting at my desk too long and recommended stretching. Around the same time, her behavior became increasingly secretive. She password-protected her phone, which had never been our practice before, and became defensive if I entered a room while she was texting. The late nights at the office became more frequent, along with weekend team-building events I wasn't invited to join. Once, when doing laundry, I noticed an unfamiliar cologne scent on her clothes, distinctly different from anything I wore. When I casually mentioned it, she became flustered, claiming it must have been from hugging a client. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had taken root. Despite these concerns, nothing prepared me for what would happen when my health finally gave out, and I discovered exactly where I stood in my wife's priorities. The morning it all fell apart started like any other Tuesday. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. with a dull ache in my abdomen but dismissed it as I had for weeks. Natasha was already up, unusually well dressed for a regular workday, applying makeup in the bathroom. When I mentioned working from home because I wasn't feeling great, she barely acknowledged me, saying something about an important presentation before rushing out the door. By 9 a.m., I was sitting at my home office desk, trying to focus on code reviews while the pain in my side intensified. What had started as discomfort was becoming sharp and localized, making it difficult to concentrate. I took some ibuprofen, hoping it would subside, but by 10:30, the pain had doubled in intensity. I tried calling Natasha to let her know I might need to see a doctor, but the call went straight to voicemail. As noon approached, the pain became almost unbearable. I was sweating profusely despite feeling cold, and any movement sent shooting pain through my right side. My team lead Marcus called to ask about a deadline, and immediately noticed something was wrong from my strained voice. "Wesley, you sound terrible. What's going on?" he asked. Between shallow breaths, I described my symptoms. Marcus's response was immediate and alarmed. "That sounds like appendicitis, man. My brother had the same thing last year. You need to get to a hospital right now. This isn't something to mess around with." I tried to downplay it, not wanting to seem dramatic. "I'm sure it's just food poisoning or something. I'll be fine." "Listen to me," Marcus insisted. "If it is your appendix and it ruptures, you could die. I'm serious. Call an ambulance or get someone to drive you to the ER immediately." His urgency finally penetrated my denial. I promised to seek medical help and ended the call, then tried Natasha again. This time, I called her work line as well as her cell phone, but still couldn't reach her. The pain was now so severe that I had to lie down on the floor beside my desk, finding slight relief by pulling my knees to my chest. After my 5th attempt to call Natasha, she finally replied with a text. "In important meetings all day. Can't talk. What's up?" My hands shaking, I typed. "Severe pain in right side. Think it might be appendicitis. Need to go to hospital." Her response took nearly 10 minutes. "Take some Tylenol. I'll check on you when meetings finish." By 2 p.m., I had a fever and the pain had become so excruciating that I couldn't stand upright. I sent another text. "Pain getting worse. Really need help." This time her response was quicker. "Fine. We'll be home soon." When Natasha finally arrived at 3:30 p.m., I was curled up on the living room couch, drenched in sweat and barely able to speak through the pain. Instead of the concerned rush I expected, she entered casually, carrying shopping bags from luxury stores downtown. "You really don't look good. she observed, keeping her distance as if I had something contagious. Maybe you should go to the hospital. I can't drive like this, I managed to say. Can you take me? Please? Her expression changed from mild concern to visible annoyance. Today? It has to be today? That's when I noticed the luggage by the door, a weekend bag and her designer suitcase. Through the fog of pain, confusion set in. Are you going somewhere? I asked. Natasha set down her shopping bags and sighed dramatically. I was supposed to leave for a business retreat in Monterey in an hour. It's been planned for weeks. You never mentioned it, I said, struggling to sit up. Because you never listen when I talk about work, she snapped. Anyway, this is terrible timing. Can you call someone else? The pain momentarily receded beneath the shock of her callousness. My appendix might be about to burst, and you're worried about timing? Don't be dramatic. It's probably just a stomach bug, she said, checking her watch. Look, I really can't miss this retreat. It's crucial for my position at the firm. As we argued, her phone chimed with a text. She glanced at it, and I saw her expression soften momentarily before she quickly turned the phone away. But not before I caught a glimpse of the notification. Can't wait for our weekend together. Just us. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This isn't a business retreat, is it? I asked quietly. You're going away with Vincent. Her defensive posture collapsed, replaced by cold defiance. Fine. Yes. Vincent and I have been seeing each other for 3 months. I was going to tell you when I got back. The physical pain in my side was matched by the emotional blow of her confession. And you're still going? While I'm like this? Natasha walked to her suitcase and checked the contents, not meeting my eyes. Wesley, we haven't been happy for years. You know that. This thing with Vincent, it just happened. He makes me feel alive again. Please, I begged, the room starting to spin as my fever rose. Whatever is happening with us, I need medical help right now. She zipped her suitcase with finality. Just call a taxi to take you to the emergency room. Or an ambulance. I've already called an Uber for the airport. You're really leaving me like this? The reality was so shocking I could barely process it. I'm sorry about your timing, but this weekend is important to me, she said, gathering her bags. We'll talk when I get back on Monday. Figure out where we go from here. And with that, she walked out the door, leaving me alone in excruciating pain, betrayed in every possible way by the woman I had loved and trusted for 8 years. After Natasha left, the pain crescendoed to a level I hadn't imagined possible. Trying to reach my phone on the coffee table, I lost my balance and fell hard from the couch onto the hardwood floor. The impact sent waves of agony through my abdomen, and I knew instinctively that something had ruptured inside me. A cold sweat broke out across my body as nausea and dizziness overwhelmed me. My phone had skittered under an armchair, just beyond my reach. For several agonizing minutes, I dragged myself across the floor, each movement sending fresh waves of pain through my body. My vision blurred, and I felt consciousness starting to slip away. In that moment, faces flashed through my mind, not Natasha, but my parents, my niece and nephew I barely knew, and most clearly, my brother Stephen. Stephen, who I'd grown distant from because of Natasha's subtle manipulations. Stephen, who had continued to send birthday cards and Christmas gifts despite my cold responses. Stephen, who had never given up on me even when I had essentially abandoned our relationship. When I finally reached my phone, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. My first instinct was to call emergency services, but a lifetime of being financially cautious made me hesitate. We had high-deductible insurance, and an ambulance ride would cost thousands. Even in my crisis, Natasha's recent spending sprees flashed in my mind, and I worried about adding more financial strain. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts, past Natasha's name, past colleagues who lived too far away to help, until I reached Stephen. We hadn't spoken in months, not since a terse exchange at our parents' anniversary dinner. I had no right to ask him for help, but I had no one else to call. He answered on the second ring. Wesley? This is unexpected. I could barely form words through the pain. Stephen. I think my appendix ruptured. Natasha left. Need help? His tone changed instantly. Where are you? At home? Yes. I managed. Can't move, hurts. I'm on my way. It'll take me about 30 minutes from the site. Stay on the phone with me. I heard him shouting instructions to someone, then the sound of a truck door slamming and an engine starting. For the next 20 minutes, he kept talking to me, asking questions to keep me conscious, telling me about his current construction project, his kids' recent school achievements, anything to keep me engaged. When my responses became slurred and infrequent, his voice grew more urgent. Wesley? Wesley, stay with me. I'm 10 minutes out. Talk to me, brother. Can't, too tired. The phone slipped from my hand as darkness encroached on my vision. The next thing I remember is the sound of breaking glass and someone calling my name. Stephen had arrived to find the doors locked and me unresponsive on the phone. Without hesitation, he broke a window to get inside. His face appeared above me, lined with worry. Jesus, Wes. You're burning up. His hand felt ice-cold against my forehead. Sorry, about the window. I mumbled. Shut up about the window, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Can you move at all? I tried to sit up and was rewarded with pain so intense I nearly vomited. Stephen didn't waste any more time with questions. With gentle but firm movements, he lifted me to my feet, supporting nearly all my weight as we shuffled to the door. Getting into his truck was an ordeal that left me gasping and weeping from pain. Stephen apologized for every bump in the road as he sped toward the hospital, running red lights and using back routes to avoid traffic. Where's Natasha? He asked once, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Left, weekend trip, with someone, told me to call a taxi. I managed between shallow breaths. Stephen's expression darkened, but he said nothing, focusing instead on getting me to the emergency room as quickly as possible. When we arrived at the hospital, Stephen didn't bother with the parking lot. He pulled directly up to the emergency entrance and honked until an orderly appeared with a wheelchair. Half carrying me inside, he shouted for help while providing what little information he knew about my condition. My brother has severe right-side abdominal pain, fever, and possible appendix rupture. He's been like this for hours and is getting worse. A nurse named Pamela took one look at me and called for immediate assistance. As they transferred me to a gurney, I clutched Stephen's hand. Thank you for coming, I whispered. His eyes were wet as he squeezed my hand. I should have been there sooner. I'm not leaving you now. As they wheeled me away for assessment, the last thing I saw was Stephen standing in the emergency room, looking lost and afraid, his shirt stained with my sweat, watching as they took his estranged brother into the depths of the hospital. The next few hours passed in a blur of pain, voices, and fluorescent lights. Dr. Thomas, a calm-voiced surgeon with salt and pepper hair, confirmed what we already suspected. It's definitely appendicitis, and based on your symptoms and the ultrasound, I believe your appendix has ruptured, he explained. This is a serious situation, Mr. Mitchell. The infection can spread quickly throughout your abdominal cavity. We need to get you into surgery immediately. Nurse Pamela efficiently prepared me for surgery, explaining each step as she inserted 4 lines and administered preliminary medications. This will help with the pain and start fighting the infection, she said kindly as she injected antibiotics into my fore. Through my fever haze, I saw Stephen hovering anxiously in the background, his face pale with worry. When Pamela asked for my emergency contact and insurance information, he stepped forward. I'm his brother, Stephen Mitchell. I'll be his emergency contact. He hesitated. I don't know about his insurance. His wife, she's not here. Pamela nodded without judgment. We'll sort that out later. Right now, let's focus on getting him ready for surgery. As they prepared to wheel me to the operating room, Stephen approached the gurney and gripped my hand. I called Mom and Dad. They're driving down from Portland, but it'll take them a few hours. I'll be here when you wake up, okay? I nodded weakly, feeling a surge of gratitude through the pain. I'm sorry, we haven't talked much lately. Don't worry about that now, he said firmly. Just focus on getting better. As they wheeled me away, I heard Dr. Thomas explaining to Stephen that the surgery would take at least an hour, possibly longer given the rupture complications. The next thing I remember is waking up in the recovery room, disoriented and groggy from anesthesia. Dr. Thomas appeared at my bedside, looking more serious than before. The surgery was successful, but challenging, he explained. Your appendix had ruptured some time ago, and the infection had spread considerably. We had to perform a more extensive cleaning of the abdominal cavity than anticipated. You're going to need a longer hospital stay and a course of powerful antibiotics. How long? I asked, my voice barely audible. At least 3 to 5 days, possibly longer depending on how you respond to treatment. You were very lucky, Mr. Mitchell. If your brother hadn't brought you in when he did, this could have been fatal. The word fatal hung in the air as Dr. Thomas left, promising to check on me again soon. A different nurse came to monitor my vitals and adjust my medication before I was transferred to a private room. Stephen was waiting when I arrived, looking exhausted but relieved. You look slightly less like death now, he said with a weak smile. What time is it? I asked, noticing the darkness outside the window. Just after 11 p.m. You were in surgery for nearly 3 hours. He pulled his chair closer. They had me fill out a bunch of paperwork while you were under. I had to look through your wallet for insurance information. Something in his tone made me uneasy. What did you find? Stephen ran a hand through his hair. Wes, your insurance card. It's expired. When I called the number on the back, they said you were removed from the policy 3 weeks ago. A cold feeling that had nothing to do with my condition spread through me. That's impossible. We have coverage through Natasha's work. Premium plan. Not anymore, Stephen said gently. You were taken off the policy. The representative wouldn't give me details since I'm not you, but it was definitely deliberate, not a clerical error. The implications were staggering. Natasha had removed me from her health insurance without telling me, likely in preparation for leaving me for Vincent. The timing couldn't be coincidence. I also tried calling Natasha, Stephen continued, his expression hardening. Multiple times. She's not picking up or returning messages. She's probably turned off her phone, I said, a wave of humiliation washing over me. She doesn't want interruptions during her weekend with him. Stephen's jaw tightened. I found some texts on your phone while I was looking for her contact info. I wasn't snooping, but they were right there when I unlocked it. Wes, how long has this been going on? I don't know, I admitted, tears welling in my eyes. I just found out today, right before she left me on the floor and went to the airport. She said 3 months, but who knows if that's true. A mix of rage and compassion flashed across Stephen's face. She left you like that? Knowing you needed medical help? I nodded, unable to speak as the emotional reality of Natasha's betrayal fully hit me. For years, I had prioritized her over everyone else, including my own family. I had defended her when she belittled Stephen's career and lifestyle. I had worked endless hours to maintain the standard of living she demanded. And in return, she had removed me from our health insurance, cheated on me, and abandoned me when I could have died. I'm such a fool, I whispered. Stephen reached out and gripped my shoulder. No. You're a good man who trusted someone who didn't deserve it. There's a difference. For the first time in years, I let myself be vulnerable with my brother. The medication, exhaustion, and emotional trauma broke through the walls I had built, and I wept openly. Stephen didn't offer empty platitudes or awkward reassurances. He simply stayed, his presence more comforting than any words could have been. When I finally regained composure, Stephen spoke with uncharacteristic gentleness. About the hospital bills, don't worry about that right now. I signed the financial responsibility forms. Stephen, no, I protested. That could be tens of thousands of dollars. I can't let you. You didn't let me, I chose to. He interrupted firmly. We'll figure it out. Maybe your insurance through work can be activated retroactively, or we can work out a payment plan. The important thing is that you're getting the care you need. As the night deepened, we talked more openly than we had in years. Stephen told me about his business successes, his children's personalities and achievements, his stable and loving relationship with Heather. I shared my growing dissatisfaction with my marriage, the isolation I had felt, and the warning signs I had ignored. Why didn't you reach out? Stephen asked. Even when things got weird between us because of Natasha, you could have called. Pride, I admitted. And shame. And honestly, I didn't want to hear I told you so. You never liked her. I never liked how she treated you. Stephen corrected. There's a difference. As exhaustion finally overtook me, Stephen promised to return in the morning. I'll bring you some real food. Hospital breakfast is criminal. You don't have to do all this, I said. Stephen paused at the door. I know I don't have to. I want to. That's what family does, Wes. Real family shows up when it matters. As I drifted to sleep, those words echoed in my mind, highlighting the stark contrast between the brother I had pushed away and the wife I had put on a pedestal. The next 3 days in the hospital established a new routine. Stephen arrived early each morning, sometimes with homemade food his wife Heather had prepared, and stayed until visiting hours ended. My parents arrived the day after my surgery and rotated visits with Stephen, so I was rarely alone. The infection from my ruptured appendix proved stubborn, requiring multiple antibiotics and careful monitoring. Dr. Thomas explained that had I waited even a few more hours before seeking treatment, the outcome could have been dire. Septic shock is not something to take lightly, he said during his rounds on the 3rd day. Your body was already heading in that direction when you arrived. During this time, my phone buzzed with messages from concerned colleagues. Marcus, who had initially urged me to seek help, checked in daily and organized a rotation of meal deliveries from the team once I returned home. My boss assured me my job was secure and to take whatever time I needed to recover. Not once did I receive any communication from Natasha. Stephen and I used these days to rebuild our relationship through honest conversations. He never explicitly criticized Natasha, but asked thoughtful questions that helped me recognize patterns of manipulation and emotional abuse I had normalized over the years. She isolated you, Stephen observed gently on the 3rd afternoon. Classic move. Get you away from anyone who might point out problems in how she treated you. I let it happen, I admitted. I chose her over everyone else. Because you loved her and trusted her, Stephen said. That's not weakness, Wes. The problem wasn't your capacity for loyalty, it was that she didn't deserve it. Around 4 p.m. on that 3rd day, my phone finally rang with Natasha's ringtone. Stephen and I exchanged glances as I answered and put it on speaker. Wesley? Where are you? Her voice sounded annoyed rather than concerned. I'm in the hospital, I replied, my voice stronger than it had been in days. Where are you? At home. I just got back and you're not here. The place is a mess, there's a broken window, and I can't find the spare key I left under the mat. I took the key. Stephen interjected loudly enough for her to hear. Didn't seem safe to leave your house accessible after I had to break in to save my brother's life. There was a moment of shocked silence before Natasha's tone changed completely. Stephen? Why are you? Wesley, what hospital are you in? I'm coming right now. Oh my God, I've been so worried. Stephen rolled his eyes at the blatant lie, but I just felt tired. St. Luke's Medical Center. Room 412. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she promised, suddenly the picture of wifely concern. After hanging up, Stephen stood. I can leave if you want privacy for this conversation. I shook my head. No. I want you to stay. 30 minutes later, Natasha burst into my room in a whirlwind of designer perfume and theatrical concern. She was perfectly made up, wearing a new outfit I'd never seen, her eyes wide with performative shock at my condition. "Wesley! Baby, why didn't you tell me it was this serious?" She rushed to my bedside, attempting to take my hand, which I subtly moved away. "I would have come back immediately." Stephen, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, made a small noise of disbelief. Natasha shot him a brief glare before returning her attention to me. "The doctors said you had emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix. Why didn't you make it clear how bad it was?" "I did," I said quietly. "I told you I thought it was appendicitis and needed to go to the hospital. You told me to call a taxi and left for your weekend with Vincent." Her face flushed. "I didn't know it was life-threatening. You always downplay everything. How was I supposed to know this time was different?" "Maybe the fever and inability to stand upright were clues," Stephen suggested dryly. Natasha ignored him, doubling down on her narrative. "I would have cancelled my trip if I'd understood how serious it was. You know I would have. I've been calling and texting since yesterday when I realized something might be really wrong." "No, you haven't," I said. "There's not a single call or text from you on my phone." I was calling your work phone," she stammered. "I thought you might have it with you." Nurse Pamela chose that moment to enter, catching the tail end of Natasha's claim. She raised an eyebrow as she checked my phone. "You must be the wife," she said neutrally. "Just so you know, your husband's condition was critical when he arrived. If his brother hadn't brought him in when he did, we might be having a very different conversation right now." Natasha blanched but quickly recovered. "It's a good thing Stephen was available. I was out of town on an unavoidable work commitment." Pamela's expression made it clear she wasn't buying it, but she maintained professional courtesy. "Well, your husband has been very brave. The infection from the rupture was extensive. He's got quite a recovery ahead of him." After Pamela left, Stephen stood up. "Natasha, we know about Vincent. We know about the health insurance too." Her facade cracked slightly. "What are you talking about? You removed Wesley from your health insurance policy 3 weeks ago," Stephen said, his voice steady. "Interesting timing, considering your weekend plans." That was a clerical error at work," she insisted. "I've already spoken to HR about fixing it." "Stop lying," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "It's over, Natasha. I know everything." For a moment, she seemed ready to continue the charade, but then her expression changed. The concerned wife vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "Fine. Yes, Vincent and I are together. And yes, I took you off my insurance because I've been planning to leave for months. But I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just needed time to figure out how to tell you. So you left me dying on our living room floor because the timing was inconvenient for your affair?" I asked incredulously. "Don't be so dramatic. How was I supposed to know your appendix would burst the exact weekend I had plans?" She glanced at her watch. "Anyway, now that I know you're okay and being taken care of, I should go. I have an important presentation tomorrow I need to prepare for." Stephen stepped forward, his patience finally breaking. "Are you kidding me right now? Your husband almost died. He's facing a mountain of medical bills because you secretly canceled his insurance. And you're worried about a presentation?" Natasha's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this, Stephen. This is between me and Wesley." "No," I interjected. "Stephen stays. He's the only reason I'm alive right now." She turned back to me, her expression softening in a practiced way I now recognized as manipulation. "Wesley, baby, we should talk privately about our situation. I know things look bad, but—" "Our situation?" I interrupted. "Let me clarify our situation. You've been cheating on me. You removed me from our health insurance without telling me. When I was critically ill, you abandoned me and told me to call a taxi. Our marriage is over, Natasha." Her face hardened. "You can't just decide that unilaterally. Actually, I can. And I am. A strange calm settled over me. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air between us. Natasha's eyes darted between me and Stephen, calculating her next move. This is his influence, isn't it? She accused, pointing at Stephen. I go away for one weekend, and suddenly he's poisoned you against me. Stephen laughed without humor. Yeah, that's what happened. It wasn't your affairs or lies or leaving your husband to die. It was my evil influence during your one weekend away with your lover. You've always hated me. Natasha spat. Always thought you were better than me with your perfect little family and simple life. I never hated you. Stephen replied calmly. I hated watching you isolate and manipulate my brother. There's a difference. Natasha turned back to me, switching tactics. Wesley, think about what you're saying. Yes, I made a mistake with Vincent. Yes, I should have taken you to the hospital. But throwing away 8 years of marriage over one bad weekend is extreme. It wasn't one bad weekend, I said quietly. It was years of you undermining my self-worth, isolating me from my family, spending money we didn't have, and making me feel like I was never good enough. I just couldn't see it until now. Her facade cracked completely then, rage replacing the calculated charm. Fine. You want a divorce? Good luck paying for it. And good luck with those hospital bills without insurance. I'm sure your construction worker brother can cover it all with his paycheck-to-paycheck lifestyle. Stephen stepped forward protectively, but I raised a hand to stop him. My brother owns a successful business that he built through hard work and integrity. Something you know nothing about. And yes, we'll manage the bills. What we won't manage is having you in our lives anymore. You'll regret this. She threatened, gathering her designer purse. You think you can just replace me? At your age? With your boring job and receding hairline? Nurse Pamela appeared at the door, her expression stern. Is everything okay in here? Mr. Mitchell needs rest, not stress. Everything's fine, I assured her. My wife was just leaving. For good. Natasha's face contorted with fury. This isn't over, Wesley. Actually, it is, I said with finality. Please have your things out of the house by the time I'm discharged. You can coordinate with Stephen for access. You can't kick me out of my own home, she shouted. It's my home too, I replied calmly. And unlike you, I have nowhere else to go right now. Plus, I need a clean, stress-free environment to recover from the life-threatening condition you left me alone to deal with. I think a judge would find that reasonable, don't you? As Natasha's voice rose further, Pamela stepped fully into the room. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is disruptive to the patient and others on the floor. This is ridiculous. He's my husband. And this is my unit, Pamela replied firmly. Leave voluntarily, or I'll call security to escort you out. With a final venomous glare at both of us, Natasha stormed out, her heels clicking aggressively down the hallway. As the door closed behind her, I collapsed back against the pillows, physically and emotionally drained. Stephen moved to my bedside, concern written across his features. You okay? I took a deep breath. No. But I will be. Pamela checked my monitors and adjusted my for. Your blood pressure's up. Not surprising after that scene. Try to rest now. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. I've been a nurse for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of relationships. That one wasn't worth saving. After she left, Stephen and I sat in contemplative silence. Finally, I spoke. I meant what I said. The marriage is over. I know you did, Stephen replied. And I'm here for whatever comes next. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the beeping of monitors rather than the comforts of home, I felt a strange sense of freedom. The fever had broken, both the physical one from my infection and the metaphorical one that had clouded my judgment for years. My physical recovery began in earnest after Natasha's dramatic exit. With the emotional weight lifted, I could focus on healing from the surgery and infection. Dr. Thomas was cautiously optimistic about my progress but warned that a ruptured appendix required careful monitoring to prevent complications. The body doesn't bounce back from abdominal infection overnight, he explained during morning rounds. You're looking at several weeks of limited activity and a gradual return to normal functioning. When discharge planning began, Stephen immediately offered his home as my recovery space. We have a guest room on the first floor, so you won't have to deal with stairs. Heather's already getting it ready for you. I hesitated, not wanting to impose on his family. Are you sure? I could get a hotel room or something. Stephen looked at me like I'd suggested camping in the hospital parking lot. A hotel? After abdominal surgery? Absolutely not. You're coming home with us. End of discussion. The discharge process was sobering. Without insurance, the financial implications of my emergency were daunting. The hospital financial counselor outlined payment plans and assistance programs, but the preliminary bill still took my breath away. Over $40,000? I whispered, staring at the estimate. Stephen squeezed my shoulder. We'll figure it out. One step at a time. A physical therapist named Olivia visited before discharge to demonstrate safe movements and exercises to prevent complications. Your body has been through trauma, she explained. Even simple activities like getting out of bed or showering will require careful attention for the next few weeks. The humbling reality of my situation hit when I tried to dress myself for discharge and couldn't bend to put on my own socks. Stephen helped without comment, preserving my dignity while providing necessary assistance. This is temporary, he reminded me. A few weeks from now, you'll be back to normal. Leaving the hospital was a milestone, but arriving at Stephen's house was an emotional moment I wasn't prepared for. Heather greeted us at the door with a warm smile, and their children, Emma, 8, and Jack, 6, peered curiously from behind her. Uncle Wesley is going to stay with us while he gets better, Stephen explained to them. Remember how Dad talked about being extra quiet and helpful? Both children nodded solemnly. Emma stepped forward with a handmade card. I made this for you. Mom said you have a big OE in your tummy? The simple kindness brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you, Emma. This is beautiful. The guest room had been transformed with extra pillows, a small table within reach of the bed, and fresh flowers. Heather had thought of details I wouldn't have considered, a grabber tool for reaching items, a shower chair, loose comfortable clothing. We want you to feel at home, she said, showing me how she'd rearranged things for easier access. Don't hesitate to ask for anything you need. That first night in their home, listening to the sounds of a family dinner being prepared and children laughing, I felt an acute awareness of what I had missed by distancing myself from my brother's life. The contrast between Natasha's cold departure and this warm welcome was stark and revealing. The legal and financial fallout began the very next day when a courier delivered divorce papers from Natasha's attorney. She was moving quickly, hoping to catch me at my most vulnerable. Stephen helped me contact Lawrence Grant, an attorney friend of his who specialized in divorce cases. This is aggressive, Lawrence commented after reviewing the papers. She's trying to claim entitlement to most of your joint assets, including the house, based on her higher income contribution. Can she do that? I asked. She can try, Lawrence replied. But judges don't look kindly on spouses who abandon their partners during medical emergencies. And removing you from insurance without notification could be considered financial abuse. We have a strong case for a more equitable division. When Stephen revealed that Natasha had emptied our joint savings account of nearly $15,000 before filing, Lawrence immediately filed for emergency financial orders to prevent further asset depletion. I can loan you money until this settles, Stephen offered. You're already doing too much, I protested. It's not charity, Wes. It's family. His expression softened. Besides, you'd do the same for me. I realized with certainty that I would have, without hesitation. The recognition of that mutual commitment was healing in its own way. The emotional healing process ran parallel to my physical recovery. At Stephen's suggestion, I started weekly sessions with Rebecca, a therapist specializing in divorce and relationship trauma. What you're experiencing is a form of grief, she explained during our first session. Even when relationships are unhealthy, their end represents the death of hopes, plans, and a version of yourself. Through these sessions, I began to recognize patterns in my marriage that had seemed normal but were actually deeply problematic. Natasha had systematically isolated me from friends and family, created financial dependence, and undermined my self-confidence through subtle criticism disguised as concern. It's called gaslighting, Rebecca explained, making you question your own perceptions and memories. Over time, it erodes your sense of reality. As I grew stronger physically, I also began reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my marriage. My colleague Marcus visited often, bringing work updates and company gossip to keep my mind engaged. During one visit, he confessed something that had been weighing on him. I suspected something was going on with Natasha and that guy Vincent. I saw them together at a restaurant outside of town, looking way too friendly. But I didn't know how to tell you or if I should get involved. I probably wouldn't have believed you anyway, I admitted. I was too invested in the illusion. My support system expanded beyond Stephen's immediate family. My parents visited weekly, bringing home-cooked meals and decades of wisdom. My mother, who had always maintained a polite distance with Natasha, finally expressed her long-held concerns. She never looked at you the way you looked at her, she observed gently. I wanted to say something, but you seemed so happy, and it wasn't my place. My old college roommate Raymond reached out after hearing about my situation through mutual friends. Man, where have you been all these years? We missed you. The truth was painful to admit. Natasha didn't really like my college friends. Said you were all immature. Eventually, it was easier not to suggest get-togethers than to deal with her reaction. Raymond shook his head. Classic. My sister went through something similar with her ex, cut her off from everyone who knew the real her. I also found unexpected support in an online group for people recovering from divorce and betrayal. Reading other stories helped me understand that my experience, while painful, was not unique, and that healing was possible. As the weeks passed, my physical strength returned gradually. The surgical incision healed, leaving a small scar that Dr. Thomas assured me would fade with time. I began taking short walks around Stephen's neighborhood, increasing my distance each day. By the 6-week mark, I felt strong enough to start thinking about independence again. With Stephen's help, I found an apartment close to his family, a modest one-bedroom that represented a significant downsize from the house I had shared with Natasha, but also a fresh start. Are you sure you're ready? Heather asked when I mentioned moving out. You know you're welcome to stay longer. I'm sure, I said, touched by her concern. You've all done more than enough. It's time I stand on my own again. My return to work was planned for the following week, with accommodations for remote work and reduced hours initially. My team had been supportive throughout my recovery, and my boss had protected my position despite my extended absence. Attorney Lawrence had secured temporary financial support from Natasha after presenting evidence of her emptying our accounts. The divorce proceedings were contentious but moving forward, with Lawrence confident about achieving a fair settlement. She made a tactical error removing you from insurance right before your medical emergency, he explained. The judge sees that as calculated and harmful. It's strengthening our position considerably. As I packed the few belongings I had accumulated during my stay with Stephen's family, I felt a mix of gratitude and apprehension. The past 2 months had transformed me, stripping away illusions and replacing them with hard-won clarity. The road ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time in years, it was authentically mine. 6 months after my appendix ruptured, life had settled into a new normal that would have been unrecognizable to my former self. The physical reminders of my ordeal had faded to a small scar on my abdomen, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. The emotional scars were healing too, though at their own pace. The divorce was finalized with terms that surprised even Lawrence. Natasha's aggressive legal strategy had backfired when evidence of her affair, financial misconduct, and abandonment during my medical emergency was presented to the court. The judge awarded me the house and a fair division of assets, citing her extraordinary breach of marital duty during a life-threatening situation. She miscalculated, Lawrence explained after the final hearing. She thought you'd be too weak or intimidated to fight back. She didn't account for your support system or your own resilience. Professionally, I had not only returned to my previous position but received an unexpected promotion. During my recovery, I had continued to contribute to key projects remotely, impressing management with my dedication and problem-solving abilities despite personal challenges. Adversity reveals character, my director commented during the promotion meeting. You've shown exceptional commitment and grace under pressure. The financial strain of my medical bills eased somewhat when my work insurance agreed to cover a portion retroactively, and the hospital reduced the remainder through their financial assistance program. The remaining amount was substantial but manageable with a payment plan. My relationship with Stephen and his family had evolved into something precious. Our weekly Sunday dinners became a cherished tradition, giving me regular connection with my niece and nephew, who had come to expect Uncle Wesley as a fixture in their lives. They ask about you all week, Heather confided one evening. Emma was worried you might disappear again once you got better. Not a chance, I promised. I'm not missing any more of their growing up. Stephen and I had established our own tradition of Saturday morning basketball at the local park, a casual game that had become an important touchpoint in our rekindled brotherhood. The true test of my healing came unexpectedly one evening when I was having dinner at a new restaurant downtown. I was reading the menu when familiar laughter caught my attention. Looking up, I saw Natasha and Vincent at a table across the room. They hadn't noticed me, and I had a moment to observe them undetected. What struck me immediately was the tension in their body language. Natasha was performing, laughing too loudly, touching Vincent's arm with practiced charm, but her eyes were scanning the room as if seeking validation from strangers. Vincent was checking his phone under the table, his attention clearly elsewhere. I waited for the surge of anger or hurt that would have once overwhelmed me, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt a surprising indifference, tinged with something like pity. Later that week, I mentioned the encounter to Stephen. The strange thing is, I felt nothing. Well, not nothing, I just didn't care. That's how you know you're really moving on, he said. When their drama becomes someone else's problem. Through mutual friends, I learned that Vincent had already been caught cheating on Natasha with a client. The poetic justice might have been satisfying in the early days of our separation, but now it simply confirmed what I already knew. The problem hadn't been me. My social world had expanded in ways I hadn't anticipated. A friendship developed with Pamela, the nurse who had cared for me in the hospital. She had checked on me after discharge, and our professional connection evolved into genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. The college reunion I attended reconnected me with friends I had neglected during my marriage. The warmth with which they welcomed me back into their lives was both humbling and healing. It's like you've been away on a long trip, my friend Raymond remarked. But the good ones pick up right where they left off. My professional growth extended beyond my promotion. I created a workplace healthcare advocacy group to help colleagues navigate insurance complexities and prepare for medical emergencies. My experience had shown me how vulnerable we all are without proper preparation and support. I was invited to speak at a company conference about emergency preparedness and the importance of understanding healthcare benefits. Standing at the podium, sharing my story with hundreds of colleagues, I realized how far I had come from the man collapsed on his living room floor, abandoned by the person who had promised to stand by him. The possibility of new love entered my life gradually. I wasn't actively seeking a relationship, focusing instead on rebuilding my sense of self and independence. But connections formed naturally as I engaged more authentically with the world around me. You're different now, Stephen observed after meeting a woman I had been seeing casually. You're not trying to make yourself smaller to accommodate someone else's ego. It shows. The final piece of my healing journey came through gratitude. At Rebecca's suggestion, I had started a journal documenting moments of appreciation and perspective shifts. Reading through the entries 6 months later revealed a profound transformation. Day 1. Grateful Stephen answered my call. Grateful to be alive. Asterisk. Day 30. Grateful for the truth, even though it hurt. Better to see clearly than live in beautiful illusion. Asterisk. Day 90. Grateful for second chances with family. Time is too precious to waste on people who don't value you. Asterisk. Day 180. Grateful for the crisis that became a doorway. Sometimes breakdown is breakthrough in disguise. Asterisk. The final entry captured the essence of my journey. Asterisk. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for that ruptured appendix. It nearly killed me, but it also saved me. Asterisk. As Stephen and I sat on his back deck one evening, planning a family camping trip with his kids, I reflected on the strange path that had led me back to what mattered most. You know what's ironic? I said, watching the sunset. If Natasha had just taken me to the hospital that day, if she'd postponed her weekend with Vincent and done the bare minimum a spouse should do, we might still be together. I might never have seen the truth. Stephen considered this. So in a way, her worst moment was actually your luckiest break. I nodded, feeling the truth of it settle within me. Sometimes the things that seem to break us actually set us free. The scar on my abdomen would always remind me of those dark hours when I thought I might die alone on my living room floor. But it would also remind me of the brother who came when I called, the family who welcomed me home, and the strength I found when everything I thought I knew fell apart. Has someone in your life ever shown their true colors during a crisis? Did betrayal ever turn out to be a blessing in disguise? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys of resilience and renewal. And if you know someone who might need to hear that sometimes rock bottom becomes a foundation for something better, share this with them. Thank you for being part of my healing journey by listening to my story. Remember, the people who stand by you when you can't stand alone are the ones worth keeping in your life.